Hey Star Trek fans, welcome to the latest episode of Dan's Disco Deep Dives, examining the Easter eggs, hidden bits, canon connections, and theories about the latest episode of Discovery, An Obol for Charon. An Obol for Charon was written by Alan McElroy and Andrew Colville, from a story by Jordan Nardino, Gretchen J. Berg, and Aaron Harberts. The episode was directed by Lee Rose. Early in the episode, we meet the mysterious Number 1, the first officer of the USS Enterprise, played by Rebecca Romijn. This character comes from the first unsold pilot episode of the original Star Trek, The Cage. She was originally played by the First Lady of Trek, Majel Barrett. Rebecca Romain's interpretation of the character includes a few callbacks to the original character, and a look that seems like it came straight out of the 60s. After beaming aboard, Number 1 and Pike discuss the problems the Enterprise has been having with her systems, and Pike makes an offhanded remark about how he doesn't believe the Enterprise will ever have a chief engineer who loves the ship as much as the current engineer, Louvier. We all know that this is not to be the case.
What was it they said that started the fight?
They call the Enterprise a garbage scow. Sir.
I see.
We see a little more of Pike's old-fashioned sensibilities when he expresses disdain for the holographic communication system, ordering it to be ripped out of the Enterprise. He obviously prefers good old-fashioned view screens, saying that the holograms look like ghosts, and his belief that the system was responsible for the Enterprise's technical issues, possibly an in-universe explanation for the limited use of holography aboard the Enterprise and other Federation starships later in the 23rd century? Take a look at the data slate that Number 1 hands Pike in the mess hall. Look at all familiar? At a staff meeting, it is mentioned that the Red Angel has been compared to all known avian and winged species, matching none of them. There haven't been many sentient winged species shown in Star Trek, but two notable examples exist, both from the animated series: the Aurelians, seen in Yesteryear, and the Score, featured in the episode The Jihad. During the Universal Translator malfunction, one of the languages that the computer displays is Tau Cetian. Tau Ceti is a star system that has been referenced numerous times in Star Trek, from the original series, the films, TNG, Voyager, and Enterprise. In a nice bit of callback, the fact that Saru has learned 94 languages, as he told Tilly in the episode New Eden, comes in handy here, as he is the only one who can understand enough to rectify the Universal Translator issue. His castigation of the rest of the bridge crew for not learning a second language was a nice touch.
Am I the only one who bothered to learn a foreign language?
Good old grumpy Saru. Jet Reno, played by Tig Notaro, returns from her appearance in the season opener, Brother. She is now working in Discovery's engineering department under the command of the chief engineer, whom we still have yet to meet. We learn from the mysterious May Ahern entity that Discovery's spore jumps are purportedly damaging the mycelial network and endangering the life forms native to that realm. This is reminiscent of the damage that Warp Drive was discovered to be doing to subspace in the TNG 7th season episode Force of Nature. Depending on if May's assertions can be believed, we may see a possible reason why the spore drive technology is abandoned in the future. 47 alert! At one point, Saru states that life support is down to 47%. 47 is a number that has a long history with Star Trek, and can be found sprinkled throughout the series and films beginning in Star Trek The Next Generation. A number of references are made to information we learned in the Short Treks episode, The Brightest Star. If you haven't watched it yet, I urge you to do so. I don't believe we're done with Saru's home planet of Kaminar yet this season, so it's not a bad idea to revisit this episode for more background information, including the first mention of the affliction that Saru is undergoing, Vaharai. Ensign Tilly and Commander Stamets sing the David Bowie classic Space Oddity during the crisis to keep Tilly calm while an invasive medical procedure is performed. They also sang the same song on a recent episode of Carpool Karaoke, which featured a number of Discovery cast members. Saru mentions being processed as a refugee at Starbase 7 following his rescue from Kaminar by Captain Philippe Georgiou. His recounting of the plight of other refugees he saw there was truly touching, and an important reminder that in the grand scheme of things, we are all just people, regardless of where we come from. My personal belief is that it is the mission of each of us to make life better, not just for ourselves, but for all people. Saru's observations were a nice reminder of that for me. This is definitely in the tradition of the best of Star Trek, which historically has featured messages applicable to real-world events. Just before the mysterious sphere lifeform dies, it uploads a vast quantity of information from its 100,000-year lifespan into Discovery's computer. It contains everything the sphere observed during that period. I wonder if it is this information that gives the Federation so much insight into galactic history in coming years, such as the Takan Empire, referenced in the TNG episode The Last Outpost, and the Iconians, referenced in TNG's Contagion and Deep Space Nine's To the Death. Will this information be referenced later in this season? My money is on yes. As usual, before I get to my theory, I want to share some of your theories that you left in the comments of last week's video. Benjamin0119 says, May did help Tilly, but was it just so she could get to Stamets, and happened to end up helping? No idea if they are working with or against the Red Angels. But it's no surprise to learn about sophisticated organisms living in the Spore network, given we already know about the tardigrade, and for them to be interested in Stamets. Yeah, it's definitely apparent that different life forms use the mycelial network. We have the tardigrade, like you said before, and it's a network connecting the entire universe, so it makes sense that it would be this other realm with other life forms and that sort of thing. So I'm really excited to learn more about that and Discovery's connection to that. I hope they don't abandon the Spore network right away, just even long enough so that we can learn more about it. Benjamin0119 also says, in regards to Section 31, I'd say they only wear the badges with each other in Section 31 ships and facilities, but Disco had officers with black badges. Then again, it's a top secret ship, so it would be layers of secretness on top of each other. But not sure. Yeah, the Section 31 badges are still a bit of a sticking point for me. I saw some theories that I thought could work, that maybe at this time Section 31 is a little bit more out in the open, still ostensibly kept in hushed tones and that sort of thing, but at least is a little bit more legitimate at this time, and maybe it evolves into something that we see later that's a lot more sinister than it is here. Don't get me wrong, I do think they're very sinister and not necessarily a force for good, but the organization of it might be different now. 100 years is a long time, so I don't know. Hopefully some of these questions will be answered later in the season. SC says, I like that the new D7 was being overseen by someone with a Starfleet connection. As I've said, I always thought the TOS D7 looked like a Miranda-type ship with a neck boom in place of a saucer, so having Ash's influence on the new unified ship makes sense for the Starfleet design cues. It hasn't been thoroughly explained, but I'd like to think that the black badges are Starfleet High Security Special Ops, and Section 31 is a deeper, more off-the-books branch within, like the well-known CIA with its Area 51/Black Ops division. That certainly could be the case. The Black Badge could be a Starfleet Special Forces intelligence unit, and Section 31 is merely a part of that no one talks about. Could very well be. That doesn't really explain Ash Tyler's reaction to the badge immediately linking it to Section 31, but maybe he knows more than the average Starfleet officer. And finally, not a theory, but a canon connection observation from Ashman XP. He says, I don't think this has been mentioned anywhere, but I noticed on the bridge they are using the LCARS sounds from TNG, specifically when the communications officer is responding to the captain and other personnel. Yeah, I did notice that as well, both on the Shenzhou and the Discovery. At various times they use Star Trek The Next Generation sound effects and some original series sound effects as well. I did think about cataloging those for the canon connection section, but it ended up being way too numerous. They do use a lot of sound effect cues. I think I'll only mention them when they really dig deep, like in the radio sound effect that they had in New Eden, and the door chime in that episode as well. So yeah, but good observation. That is, they are definitely pulling from the back catalog of Star Trek for their sound effects. So for this week, for my theory, I'm going to be sharing one that I've seen recently online. With this last episode, we saw Saru go through a transformation. He lost his ganglia, in effect losing the fear that had controlled his life and gaining a sense of power that he'd never had before. Now, the theory that I've seen out there, I'm not sure I entirely buy it, but it's an interesting one that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. The Baul, the predator species of the Kelpians, may in fact be Kelpians themselves. Kelpians who have lost their ganglia and they've become more powerful and less fearful. Now, their relationship with the Kelpians who have not lost their ganglia yet is unclear. Are they keeping them as slaves or in servitude or in thrall to them somehow? Or is it more benign than that? Are they merely living somewhere else and raising up other Kelpians that lose their ganglia? I personally don't think, if this is true, that it's something benign. I think there's some dark side to this for sure. But another question that arises from that then, is it possible that the priests, like Saru's father, are in on it, and maybe they themselves are Ba'ul who have also lost their ganglia and are controlling the destinies of all the other Kelpians? Like I said, I'm not sure I really buy into this theory, but it is a really interesting one. But it is just one of many theories out there, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. So let me know your theories in the comments below. I'll discuss some of them in next week's video. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching, and thank you especially to the Patreon supporters for their support of the channel. I really do appreciate it. And everyone else, like, share, and subscribe if you feel this video is worth it. And thank you again so much for watching. And until next time, beware of weird spore life forms that force people to drill holes in your head. Not good.